request to my national leader, Mr. K.S. Kushi, to say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I must apologize for being late. And I understand that most of you were waiting here since 7:15. We are saying each that you enjoy waiting more than the actual meeting. And I hope in this case this has not been proved correct. But in any case, I'm glad to know that you've enjoyed your meal. And I shall not try to burden you with too much of the details. Although the speech by the local chairman has made has touched upon various topics and subjects which really amount to a very, very tall order if I were to explain all the points that he has raised. However, I shall briefly explain to you the object of our visit here and also what the Kashmir issue is all about. My party, that is the Kashmir Liberation League, believes and stands for the freedom of the people of Kashmir, who, like any other people or any other nation, have the same equal birthright and freedom as any other nation, and the right which has been guaranteed in the United Nations Charter, which was promised by the British government when they left the subcontinent, and to which both the governments of India and Pakistan agreed. And luckily, I'm told that there are members of both the Labour and Conservative parties here, and on this issue, for once in 1947, there was no dispute between the two parties, because the Act of Indian Independence passed in 1947 was one of the quickest measures carried through the House. It came after agreement with the Indian leaders and the leaders of Pakistan during negotiations which took place between the Cabinet Mission and later on with Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was the last Viceroy of India. The main problem now, after the freedom of India and after the emergence of Pakistan as a free country, is the future of Kashmir. And as Mr. Brixman has said, Kashmir, as he knows, it's your country. I may say it is beautiful, referred to as the Paradise, referred to the East Switzerland. It's always been referred to as the place where four empires, and that is from where the tragedy really starts, because this is a place where four empires meet. That is in the old days when it was, the title was given to it by one of the British authors, Mr. Knight. At that time, the four empires were the Russian Empire, the Chinese Empire, the British Empire, and of course Afghanistan. Now Afghanistan has been eliminated. The British Empire is no longer there, and we have two empires, shall we can use the terminology, although it may not be very exact and appropriate. The Chinese and the Russians are still there. Now what has really happened lately is that the Russian armies, after their entry in Afghanistan, are sitting on the Kashmiri borders because they have occupied what is known as the Wakhan Valley, and that Wakhan Valley adjoins upon the northern borders of Kashmir state. So that today there is no, shall we say, the buffer state or the buffer zone, as Afghanistan was used to be called, between Kashmir and Russia, or between Pakistan and Russia. That is one factor which added to the anxiety, the concern, and the deep disturbance of the people all over Kashmir state. But even prior to that, our problem was that Kashmir state was partly occupied by India and is partly occupied by India. Partly it is free, where we have the Azad Kashmir government, which literally means the free Kashmir government, of which I had the honor to be the president, and also partly the northern areas of Gilgit and Baltistan, which border upon China, through which the famous Silk Route passes. In this area we have the two highest peaks, the K2 and the Nanga Parbat, which I suppose students of geography and history, even in England, must be knowing very well. Now, unfortunately, politically, the British, in their usual diplomatic manner, left certain things vague when they departed from the subcontinent. One of the things was the future of the princely states. As you will recall, India under the British was divided into two separate types of administration. One was the British India, directly governed by the Governor-General and the Viceroy of India, under whom we had governors for each province. And the other was the Indian India, which was ruled by the local princes, the Maharajas, the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Nabobs and others. They had only treaty and crown, and the Viceroy, in their case, did not act as the Governor-General, as the Viceroy, but only purely as the Crown representative to enter into agreements and treaties with these, with the rulers, the local princely rulers. So at the time of the 1957, when they agreed to the partition of the subcontinent, that was Pakistan, they left rather vague the position of the states. And the only way the Indian Independence Act said was that all the treaties and agreements with the states will lapse, and paramount cease to exist. Consequently, what will happen was not mentioned in the Act itself. As a consequence, the result was that sovereignty reverted to the states, because all the local princely rulers claimed that since treaty obligations had ended, since British paramountcy had ended, since crown relationship had gone, so thereafter we were free, the states were free. And that was the position which was taken up by Lord Mountbatten, and that was the position which was also taken up by the founder of Pakistan, Quaid-e-Azam, Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah. That meant that the states were free either to remain independent and sovereign, or to accede to either of the two dominions, that's of India or Pakistan. But we added a rider to that the ruler was not to exercise that discretion or decision autocratically, but he must do so in accordance with the will of the people. And from there, another chapter started, namely that the local ruler, the Maharaja, tried to crush the people who had risen in revolt in 1947. And then, by a document was extracted from the ruler, and the consequence of that document, the Indian armies went into the Kashmir state and occupied a big portion.